Today's episode of Free Mama Radio was previously recorded during the Diversity in Business panel at Free Mama Live. It was too good to keep private, so we're sharing it here today. Stay tuned. You're listening to Free Mama Radio, where we believe you can have both a successful business and show up as the mom you want to be. I'm your host, Lauren Golden, a mom who built a full-time income working part-time hours. Now, I help other moms like you learn how to work from home on your own terms, take control of your schedule, and make more money so you can live a totally awesome, guilt-free life. I am on a mission to make sure that no mother has to choose between family and financial stability. So if you've been wondering, can I really have it all? This podcast will give you the answers. Hey mamas, welcome back to another episode of Free Mama Radio. I'm so excited to have you here. I am literally driving a U-Haul across the Midwest. And yesterday, as I am recording this, was election day. We still do not have a declared winner of the presidential election, although by the time this episode airs, we may or we may not. And I think that really speaks to just the disruption of 2020, whether it's conversations around anti-racism that have surfaced this year, the global pandemic, my family moving. I mean, I just feel like on the most micro and macro levels of our world, we are in a state of transition and awakening and disruption. And it can feel really chaotic. It can feel disappointing. It can feel confusing. It can feel a lot of different things. And just being on social media yesterday and watching the news as we were trying to fall asleep in our RV halfway through our migration up to Kansas City, I was just so aware and empathetic towards the myriad of emotions that I could feel on both sides of the political aisle. And I just felt like this was the perfect time to make public a conversation that was previously private. And so we just wrapped up a 2-week Free Mama Live event. It was awesome. So please do yourself a favor and do not miss the next one. But one of the things we did during that event was a hour-long panel that was called our Diversity in Business panel. Now, of course, we know that diversity goes well beyond business, but to keep it in alignment with our responsibility as business owners and as mothers and as humans, we knew that this was something that was really important to include, this conversation, this space that we hold as a Free Mama community. It was an important conversation that I knew that I wanted to incorporate into this event. And so 2 women that I met through virtual masterminds that I am a part of sat down with me. These are professionally trained inclusion and diversity experts, and you're going to get to hear their introductions and all about their background and how they got into this line of work, as well as some really hard and uncomfortable questions and topics. And we go there together. And again, thinking about where our country and our world is, not just this week, but this year, I knew that it was the perfect episode to bring to you all today on Free Mama Radio. So I hope you enjoyed.
Hello. How are we doing? Happy Wednesday. Hey, Sylvia, we got you on the big screen with those dance moves this morning. Yeah, show me some hearts. What did you guys think about Jay's international DJ spin this morning? Shout out to Jay. Does Jay get us or what? Like, he totally knows what we need and when we need it. For our 2 panelists today, yesterday was Disney Day, just to give you some perspective about what, like Disney songs, about what we've got going on in the background. I'm so excited. I'm going to skip all the announcements this morning, and we're just going to get down to it. Is that cool with you guys? Are you guys ready to rock and roll this Wednesday? I heard Mia needs to know what day it is. Mia, it's Wednesday, all day. But yeah, who needs days is what we're saying, right? We don't know what day it is. All right. Jay is working on getting our beautiful speakers pinned for me so that I can see you guys up on my screen. I'm so excited. Here's the deal. You know how we've been talking a lot over our time together about relationships and building your network and being in community? I am not qualified to deliver this panel today. I am not qualified. And because of my network, because of groups that I choose to associate with, getting these two experts, these two beautiful women on our panel today was as simple as making a Facebook post. So when you put yourself out there and you guys are getting in community with other people and you're being intentional about who you surround yourself with, you can make really amazing things happen. So I am so excited to bring these ladies on. I know we can obviously see Charmin Rickards and LaDonna. Are you going to be turning on your camera today? It's okay if you're not, by the way. There she is. Hey, she's ready to go. I'm so
ready.
Yay. And I know which one of you has something at the top of the hour. One of you has something at the top of the hour. You do. Okay. So y'all, I can't go all Lauren on them and keep going in the questions and make our session go over. Everybody, we need to be on the honor system today and watch our time and respect our speakers' time. But let's go ahead and dive in. So today we've been doing panels all week just to set the stage for you two lovely ladies. It's a 15-day virtual conference. You can obviously see, we believe that business should be accompanied by our children and dance parties. It's just more fun that way. So that's what we've been doing. And we have 3 days left. So we are starting to wrap up. And all this week we have been doing panels. And so this particular panel is a topic that is very important to me. And I know it's important to both of you. And I know that it's important to everybody who's showed up with us today. And I feel like my responsibility just as the leader of my community is to create the space to have this conversation. And I'm very excited to learn from both of you and do a lot more listening than talking today. But let's go ahead and get started with introductions so that everybody can meet you all. So let's start with you, Charmin. Tell us who you are. Tell us a little bit about your background. The stage is yours.
Well, hello, lovely mamas. Again, my name is Charmin Rickards, and as you can see from the shadow box in the background, I am a 22-year Navy officer veteran, disabled veteran. And so I did 22 years in the military, started off enlisted, undesignated. That meant I was a glorified janitorial services, and then subsequently became a hospital corpsman, and then finished up my undergraduate degree and got commissioned as a healthcare administrator. And so you probably are thinking, like, how did I go from all of that to diversity and inclusion? Well, Navy medicine need to have diversity in the different corps that we have. And so I had the honor just before I retired to serve as the deputy diversity officer. And so that is where my diversity background came from, as well as when you serve with a diverse group of people, and you don't have a choice on who you get to serve with. You don't have a choice on who you get to lead or be on a team. So you have to have a diversity of thought. And in the military, it's one team, one fight. You become family. You become someone that you need them to depend on. You need them to depend on you. And so you have to get to know that whole person. And so that is where my background comes from, with being in the DI and E space. And I'm just so glad to be here. I currently have, I have a side hustle too. Right. And I call my side hustle my boring job, which is working for the federal government, doing affirmative employment program management, which is what I do now, right? And which is what I like to do. I was fortunate enough when I transitioned to be able to get into the space where I can still do what I'm passionate about, which is help individuals reach their full human potential and know that they have a greatness inside of them. And what I just want to help ignite it and just blow it up so that they can be who, do what they're passionate about. So that's me in a nutshell. And I am long-winded and I love to talk. So we have time sensitive here. So I will let LaDonna go next, if that is the format here. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for I think we have a lot in common. And I just want to say, I'll echo everybody's thoughts in the comments. Thank you for your service. And I'm just so excited. I'm excited to learn from you today. I love the word choice that you use. just a lot of the words that you're saying, I'm like, oh, that's so intentional. I can feel the intentionality behind the words that you use when you describe what you do. Let's go over to our friend LaDonna. Hi, welcome. Good morning. Good afternoon, wherever you're tuning in.
Hi, everybody. How are you all doing? Gosh, this is like a great group. Great group. Love talking to mamas all the time. That's what's up. And I definitely, Charmin, I want to just say thank you for your service. Absolutely. So honored to be on a panel with you. I will start by talking about really generally how I got into DEI work was because I am known as a food justice activist. I started working in the world of food justice because my son developed food allergies at a very early age. Wade was allergic to all dairy products, eggs, shellfish, and peanuts. And trying to figure out how to feed him became like my life's mission. And from that, though, I began to understand that there's something wrong with the food system. Something was missing in the food system. And his dad and I at the time, his father at the time, I would say my ex-husband, but I'm trying not to say ex. But he's not my husband no more.
Was been.
Okay. Was been. I just want to be clear. We're not married anymore. Anyway, we started to convert vacant lots to urban farm sites. And we started to feed our community. I'm from the west side I'm from Chicago. I did a lot of this work on the west side of Chicago. And that introduced me to how different communities receive food, right? Not just healthy food, but all kinds of food. That put me in the proximity of policymakers. And so I've done a lot of policy work around making sure that communities get enough food to eat. A lot of people have dreams. One of my dreams was to build a grocery store in an African-American community that brought natural food to the community. Because of that food justice work, I ended up moving to Minneapolis, which is where I am now. And my job was to research the food system and to see its impacts on people who actually worked in the food system, particularly those people who are growing our food. I had stayed at that job for about 3 years, and then I was invited to work at a cooperative grocery store called Seward Community Co-op. It was 42 years old at that time, and they wanted to build a grocery store in a traditionally African-American community. And they were challenged to do that because they were a predominantly white organization. And they thought they were coming in and they were the good guys and they were going to bring the great food and they were going to save everybody and like, yay, we're going to get it done. And the community was like, hold them up. You're not going to be able to serve us anything. You don't look like us. We don't believe you want to feed us. You look elitist and not inclusive. And so my job was to coordinate the conversation in community, basically organize the community, find out what they really wanted, and interpret that for Seward Community Co-op. From there, we began internally to change the systems. And so I started to work with the co-op in an intercultural development way. By assessing, I use a process called the IDI, or the Intercultural Development Inventory, that allows me to be able to understand where people are. And then where they are and where they want to be are usually two different things. So from there, we got Seward Community Co-op, we got that store open. Fantastic operation, projected to make $9 million in its first year. First year made $16 million. That's how well it did. That's how much support that community needed and wanted. I'm going to tell you one more thing about my store. I started off there as a staff person. Now I am president of the board, and we have 2 stores and a restaurant. And our grocery store our 2 grocery stores make about $45 million a year. Seward, the Friendship store that I'm speaking to you about, is about 5 blocks from where George Floyd was murdered. So our community was directly input. Our staff who walk to work, who live in that community, were definitely impacted by the murder of George Floyd. And Minneapolis has been somewhat of the epicenter for this work. Since that time, I no longer work there. I'm president of the board, but I am a full-time consultant. I work with cooperatives and other business all over the country, helping them implement some of the similar strategies that Seward Community Co-op implemented, which include looking at their hiring system, looking at their staffing patterns, doing community engagement, diversifying their supply chain, and among many, many things. So my DEI work is based in, sometimes it's based in food, but it's definitely based in an understanding that we have to have a more inclusive world. Monocultures don't serve any of us. It doesn't serve us in our environment, and it won't serve us in our institutions. So that's me. Ta-da.
I mean, can we all just like give hearts? I feel like I'm in the presence of two extraordinary women, and my only regret at this moment is that we only have 48 minutes. I'm like, how are we going to pull this together in 48 minutes? But we're going to do our best. And we might have to beg you guys to come back another time or something, because I can already tell this is going to be so good. Great segue, LaDonna. Let's set the stage here. I no matter what I'm doing or working on or whatever, I try to be intentional. So let's make sure we're all kind of speaking that same language. What does diversity and inclusion mean? What are we talking about here? And I know that might be a little bit of a loaded question, because quite frankly, the fact, LaDonna, that you just shared that you started this through food shows my privilege that wasn't even like, I'm like, oh my gosh, wow. Like that was your gateway into this conversation. That alone to me is just really remarkable. So if you guys want to answer one at a time, or if you have a joint belief about this, we'll pop back over to Charmin first. But what are we talking about when we're looking at diversity inclusion, specifically in businesses?
Well, I like to use an analogy with basketball to describe what diversity, equality, and inclusion mean to me. Diversity is like when you go out and you you try out for a team and you're selected. And then inclusion is you're part of the 5 that is selected to get on the court when the game starts. And then equality is that you're given the ball to take your best shot from wherever you want to take it. So that to me is how I like to define diversity and inclusion, because going from enlisted to officer in the military, I have to tell you, I met the diversity, but I was not always included or given the equality piece for being a voice at the table. So yes, I had a seat at the table, but I did not have a voice at the table. So for me, I hope I was able to articulate and answer that question for you. And so that is why I am so passionate about, what I like, what I do, and what I help women with is I don't want you to have a seat at the table. I want you to own the table so you can sit wherever you damn well please.
Ooh, that's good. That was a huge aha moment. I love that analogy, and it makes perfect sense. So we're not talking about, these aren't 3 synonymous words, right? No. Diversity is one thing, inclusion is another thing, and equality is something completely different. I love the picture that you just painted. LaDonna, do you want to add anything to that? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Shannon.
No, just like in diversity recruitment, they'll be like, oh, it's so hard to find a Black physician in a specific field like anesthesiologist. Well, you're not casting your net where they're at. You're only casting your net where you're familiar with. You have to cast your net, and you have to break down those barriers that we have, and those stereotypes and those biases.
Okay, before I go back over to LaDonna, are you guys cool? Can we go rogue? Because this is just too real of a conversation to like go off a piece of paper. I think one of the most prominent things, I won't speak for anybody but myself, that would be really ignorant. One of the most prominent things I think of with diversity, especially in the media today and just the world that we're living in, is race. But that's not just what we're talking about here, correct?
Right.
when we look at diversity? What are we really peeling back the layers of?
I kind of want to jump in a little bit here, because I think you got to really, you got to have a couple things going on, right? So folks want to be interculturally competent. You want to be competent, right? The first thing is to have some self-awareness. You have to know what your own culture is, right? And what happens in our society, the reason that we tend to focus on race is because we don't have a language around race in the United States. But yet, what we talk about when we are talking about differences that make a difference, oftentimes race is the difference that makes a difference. So when we're talking about this work, you have to, like you said, you got to name what you're talking about. So differences that make a difference can be anything. It might not be race. In a room full of people who are African American and they all have the same maybe historical ancestry, connections to the South, then, race might not it's not the biggest difference. The biggest difference would be maybe political views. That's a difference that can make a difference. If one group believe one thing and another group believed another thing, that is a difference that can make a difference. But I want to go back to the definitions of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I use the word equity. I don't use the word equality. Diversity is demographics. This is what I tell my clients all the time. Demographics, simply demographics. How many or what kind of people do you have? How many crayons do you have in the crayon box, and what do they look like? Inclusion is whether the people count. So just like the basketball analogy, when people get in the space, well, what does it matter that they're there? How does it count? How does it matter? Equity has two parts to it. Equity is how you look at how they count. So did they need any kind of adaptation to count? And it's also an outcome. Equity is the outcome. What does it matter that you have the diversity, you have the demographics, and where the people land? What does it matter? What's different? That's called an equity lens. So when we start to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, it really is important to understand that they are not one and the same thing, but we really are trying to get to the outcome, which is equity. So to answer that question around, well, are we talking about more than race? Yes. And race is a great thing for us to talk about right now because it's the main thing that we can't get right. So we have to talk about race in order for us to really be able to confront the fear that this country has around Black bodies. So you asked me to bring it, and I only got a little bit of time to bring it. So I'm gonna bring it. I'm gonna bring it to you.
And
okay.
just so
I'm gonna give it to you. Okay.
No, just so you know that I have a beautiful Black man sitting behind the screen right here, like clapping for you all. We should probably get Jay out back here at some point. And he has been helping me now. I mean, not just this week, obviously. He helps me in life open my eyes and my heart and my perspective. And anyway, we're just grateful for him. But so you know, you have a beautiful Black man back here cheering you on right now. We'll have to bring him out. So let's keep this conversation going. For those of us, for people who come from different communities, how do we foster conversation? And I love what you pointed out around, we don't have a language. I don't know. I believe you use the word language. We don't have the language to talk about race. Right. So how do we foster conversation that helps bring about equity, diversity, inclusion, equity?
I can say just one thing, and then I'm gonna go switch. Let Charmin jump in here. This is an issue that is centuries old. So we're not going to race to any particular conclusion, right? So being able to deal with the ambiguity and the complexity and the deepening complexity is really hard for people in white bodies, right? See, folks in white bodies haven't been socialized around culture at all, right? So it's just like, well, we don't really know what that is. That's what my clients tell me. And I don't really know what you mean when you say culture. We can look at other people and see their culture, but we don't know what that means. So this is really around understanding how you have come to put yourself together in culture, right? What does it mean to be white in the United States? Folks like me in a Black body, I've been socialized to see race and culture all my life. Why? Because my life depends on it. Jay's life depends on him knowing that he's a Black man. He better know it, and he has got to put himself in the position to be able to respond to people who see him only as a Black man. So when we are talking about how do we get someplace, it's important to understand that you're not going to get someplace and then jump off the boat. You're going to continue to have this conversation because this is essentially about communication. How do we talk through difference? How do we communicate with each other? And that's where that differences that make a difference opens up a broader conversation. Because essentially, we don't know how to be in conflict with each other and still be in love and still love each other.
Ooh, we're gonna keep talking about that here in a minute. Charmin, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I mean, I'm gonna echo what she said, and then I'm just gonna also say that you know, from my perspective, is that you have to have candid conversations, and in order to get to know the differences. From again, my perspective of being a leader in the military there's an echo. Is to know more about the person than the work that they're doing for me, so that I can have a better appreciation of who the whole person is. If I had a lot of Filipinos that I work with over in Okinawa, Japan, and knowing their culture, that is up to me as the leader in order to educate myself, in order to be the better leader, to be able to communicate with them and be able to know their culture and their differences. And so you have to get to know the whole person outside of what they're doing for you. And if what makes them tick, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And so, as she said, as LaDonna mentioned, and I may have butchered this up because I was just in awe, because again, ladies, I am ever learning, it's lifelong learning. So LaDonna, you're dropping some nuggets on me to make me a better person and a better a diversity inclusion practitioner as well. Just wanted to let you know that. So it's you have to get to know the person to love the person. When you look at me, I'm brown skin, I'm light skin. We have our challenges even in the Black community, where you have dark skin and light skin. I have, Caucasian ancestries on my grandmother's side. My grandmother's dad was, a white guy. So to know the differences of why she act the way she act when she was growing up, and some of the stories that she would share. So, we're not, I don't know. I usually say we're not a melting pot. We're a mosaic. And when we put it together, we're just a beautiful piece of artwork. So that's my 2 cents to LaDonna's 25 cents.
No, y'all are throwing just dollar bills everywhere. Okay. Alicia had a great question. And I know a lot of people experience this, and we're going to tenderly move over into politics and diversity here in a minute. But Alicia asked a great question as a follow-up: is how do you handle others that can't talk without the conflict? What would you for those of us who have either, family members who are disagreeable, or people that we're encountering in our business and in our life, how do we approach that when there's not reciprocity to the loving communication?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is an interesting question because I get it a lot, right? And so I always ask people, what is your conflict style? Because most times people don't know how to be in conflict themselves. For example, when we are having a conversation, and the stakes get really high when we start to talk about a polarized political environment. But I'm not even talking about that, because I don't think you should actually be in that conversation. You got a lot of people who you think like you, who are your friends. You need to talk with them first, okay? Talk with them, practice on them. Practice on people who are closer to you in proximity, as opposed to somebody that's polar opposite. Why? Because you have to build the communication skills. You have to build a conflict resiliency muscle. And if you're not conflict resilient, you're not going to be able to hang out in a conflict. Why? Because you get activated. And once you get activated in a conversation and you move out of engagement into fear or anger or flight or frustration, or you freeze, you're not able to really communicate anything. So you really have to be able to stay in community, in engagement. And engagement is being centered. It's not always being happy, but it's being centered. You really have to monitor the body's responses, because if you get frustrated with someone in the conversation, they can't hear you and they're frustrated with you. And you know how that spirals. You've probably been in conversations where you talking and you cool and you say something and the person flips completely out on you. And you're like, what did I say? You got two choices, right? You can flip out with them, or you could try to stay in engagement and they still can't hear you. And you have to wait and come back to that conversation. So really understanding how you respond in conflict is important, because you could be talking one conflict style. And let's say your conflict style is that you just say everything and you mean what you mean, you talk with your hands and everything is moving around like this. And another person goes into conflict and they're like this. Them two people are not hearing each other, right? Because the person that's waving their hands feels that the person who's stoic is not listening to them. And the person who's stoic is feeling like you getting ready to hurt them because you all over the place. So there's a lot to communicating. There's so much. DEI work is about efficient and effective communication, and you really have to be conflict resilient.
So fantastic.
That was Charmin. I don't know if I have anything to add to that, to be honest with you. Communication is the key to success. She's right on point with that, and I just have to echo that. I'll share, I love stories, so I'll share a story where, I was in the, when I was serving, I had one of my directors that said to me, you've picked up this skill set so well. And I know that if you go to this particular school, that you would automatically make rank. Because of the 4 people that are doing this work for the Bureau of Medicine and Surgery, they're all male Caucasians. And, you have to be mindful when you wear the uniform and how you deal with superiors. So I had to, be able to communicate to him, hey, what my desires are and how that made me feel. And so as a African American female officer, I don't want to be given an opportunity based on my demographics. I want to be given an opportunity based on my skill sets. So it's a different way. Now, if you had said, hey, because you've picked up this skill set so well, and I've already talked to Monterey Postgraduate School, and you would be a shoe in for success, then that's a better way of communicating that opportunity to me rather than communicating it the way that he did. Because immediately, again, it gave me a different perspective on his leadership style. So, but I definitely and I'm taking notes here, Miss LaDonna, the conflict style, definitely.
Yeah. I love the ownership that came from that response, right? It was, how do I deal with someone else who isn't good at conflict? And she's like, what's your conflict? Like how, I love it has to start with each one of us. If you just view everybody else as the problem and you're not addressing your own stuff, we're not going to get anywhere. So again, just to catch you ladies up, all of these beautiful mothers here have started home-based virtual businesses. So as freelancers and business owners, what's our responsibility when it comes to diversity and inclusion in business, both within our companies that we're building and the experiences for our clients and customers?
It's a great question. There's a couple things. One is to, be able to manage conflict, right, in your business. As you know, you're going to have conflict. Somebody doesn't like something. And it's not always, we think about conflict, we think we can avoid it. You can't avoid conflict. It's natural. We have conflict with ourselves about what we want to wear in the morning, what color lipstick you want to put on, and stuff like that, right? So how do you resolve? You got to be able to have that resiliency. If I could stress that more and more, I would. So many of us have children, being able to practice this thinking about with children is really very important. So how are we inclusive when we think about our young people? How do we adapt and change our style to be effective? That's the other thing that I was talking about. You don't talk to your baby the way that you might talk to your 13-year-old. Why? Because it's not effective. So you want to choose whether you want to be effective or do you want to be right? And sometimes in arguments, we decide that we want to be right, and then you go on ahead and throw down like that, right? Or you decide that you want to be effective, and you might back off and use a different strategy. So in your business, understanding that there's a give and a take in your business. A lot of things you can do, though. You can start to look for folks who are have differences that make some difference for you. Are you using an LGBTQIA accountant? Are you using a Black attorney? What architects are you using? Where do you source your products? Are those folks people of color? Are they women? Are they veterans? You can create your own metrics around who you choose to work with, and it's going to take you a little bit of work. Charmin said you got to cast your net. Why? It's absolutely true. Diversify your supply chain. Where are you buying your pens and paper from? Who are you buying them from? Where do you buy your computers? Where do you get your paper? Think about spending your money in communities of color or communities of difference. Think about encouraging your clients to think about differences. And you don't have to be like, I'm trying to racialize the world. We got to be more diverse. We got to have more equity. If they're looking for a florist, do you have a Black florist that you can recommend? Do you have a baker that you could recommend? Who's in your neighborhood? Who's in your community? And I swear to God, if you tell me you don't have any diversity in your neighborhood, I'm going to tell you it's not true. You do. You have to look. You got to look. You got to look for the diversity in your neighborhood. I'll stop there.
Great.
You're right on point. What I would like to add to what LaDonna said is that, as freelancers or, you can, again, educate yourself, have a diversity calendar where you are maybe posting something on your Facebook page that is different than what you have normally posted. It may be something about the LGBT community. I just, personally, I just got married on the 10th and I married the love of my life. And if you had asked me like 28 years ago, would I have married a woman? I would have told you, hell no. But I'm happy to say that I did. And it was just a wonderful experience. And I just couldn't ask for a better spouse. But from a business owner and leader as well, is when if you have staff and you have huddles, have a diversity of thought in your meeting. Start off with something where, you can talk about what is going on in the world as it relates. And again, you can use Diversity Inc. has diversity calendars. You can Google the advent of technology these days. You could just Google, what is going on and just, just do a post or have a conversation or just educate and increase the awareness about what is going on in those different communities, whether it's the Hispanic community, LGBT, veterans, disability, Black, Asian American, Pacific Islanders or Indians, whatever it may, there's something to be learned from all of the diversity, the mosaic pieces that we have into the world. So just increase your awareness. I have this thing about the federal government is checking boxes and not behaviors. And I'm going to leave that right there. And I want to be on the move to not check the boxes, but check behaviors.
I love that. So kind of going in alignment with what you were just talking about, the tangible things we can do. I love what you said, by the way, the diversity of thought in meetings. Like, what a great idea for anybody who has a team like that. I love that. By the way, my page is like full of notes. This is so beneficial. How do we, who live in white bodies, to borrow LaDonna's language, how do we for those of us who are not people of color, and we're in this conversation about diversity, and we want people to know that they are included. I saw someone in the comments saying, like, check your stock images, your social media, like what you were saying, like, are you just representing white people? Do you all believe that there is a fine line between tokenizing or coming across as performative versus being genuine, or is that all about intention? What is that line for a company?
You know, I mean, I think there is a way to tokenize people, you know, definitely. I mean, if you're the only one, the first one, and there's no support, you know, for you to be the only one and the first one. And yet I've found myself in those positions. I was the first diversity and equity manager at a co-op, you know, in the country, right? And now everybody is hiring diversity and community engagement managers, equity managers. I think the way that I would think about this, though, is it's easy to think about this in a really polarizing way, right? So let's not just think of the either or. Let's think of the both and, right? So what I would say to people who are in white bodies is to notice the diversity that is already around you. Because even in your huddles, like what Charmin was saying, you don't really you got diversity right there that you don't acknowledge. And perhaps someone is different and they're not willing to tell you that they have a difference because they don't feel like they'll be accepted. Someone could have a disability that is unseen, but they're not recognized and they don't want to show you or share with you because they feel like they might be marginalized. So you can be marginalized in a white body and not feel included. Now, this seems like it might be counterintuitive because we are talking about the other, right? But when we're talking about diversity, you are a diverse people. The problem with being in a white body is that everybody is white and that's one big giant melting pot. But generally, the white body is focused on health. You got to be super healthy. You got to be super thin. I'm sorry, Lauren, but you're supposed to be blonde too with blue eyes. Right?
I know. I can take it, LaDonna.
You feel it? You feel me? You know what I'm saying? So that's the white body that everybody is going to. So if you're older and you're white, you're not included. If you're disabled, you're not included. If frankly, if you're too dark, you're not included. If your hair is red, you're not included. If your hair is brown, you're not included. So when we talk about the white body being the standard that everybody's got to get to, we have to recognize that even people in white bodies are oppressed by that standard. And so I don't want you to be confused and think about, I'm just only talking about the other. I'm talking about you. Can you recognize the diversity in your own family? Can you recognize the diversity of opinion in your own business? Do you see yourself as a CEO of your business? I know you send your freelancers and you this and you that, but you are CEO, president of your business. You are in control of that business. How do you want to position your business to be the best business that it can be and be the business that leads the way in how to become more diverse, more inclusive? How do you do that? Well, you got to recognize diversity around you. Age, geographic regions make a difference. People up the hill, people down the hill, people from the South, people from, South that way, North that way. You see what I'm saying? People who are socioeconomically different, poverty, someone growing up with money, someone growing up with limited resources, someone having a college education, someone not having a college. These are differences that make a difference when the room is all white. Am I lying to you? Am I making this up?
No. This is so good. I love that you keep saying a difference that can make a difference. Like, I'm going to have that framed and hung on my wall. I mean, that is so good. Charmin, would you like to expand?
I'm just going to add that you have to know what's in the baggage that you're carrying around. So know yourself. and know that you have these biases too that you develop when you're growing up, and how you can, and it's all about perception and experiences. My aunt and my mother was raised in the segregated down south, where if a little white boy came on the sidewalk, they had to get off. They had to go in the back of the store. Now, when they were telling me this as I was growing up about the shoulders that I was standing on, I did not have a perspective because I did not have an experience. So I would always say that happened in your time. But as we're seeing things change, it's now happening in my time. And so I grew up in Delaware, where there's not a high percentage of African Americans in Delaware. People were like, there's Black folks in Delaware? Yes, there is. But I didn't have the experiences that my parents had, or my aunts had, my relatives had, with being discriminated against until I got older. And so I had to have some self-awareness of what is, like LaDonna said, my diversity, within myself. So know what is in your bag, what you're carrying around. There's this video that you on YouTube called Silent Beats, and it shows all of the unconscious biases that we have about the different races. It shows a African-American boy, and it comes on, and it's just tap dancing. And then it has a older white lady that's in the grocery store, and then not grocery store, in the convenience store. And then it has an Asian guy that owns the convenience store, and it just shows the different perspectives and biases that go through their mind as they're interacting with each other. It's called Silent Beats. And it just gives a good picture of how we have these unconscious biases. And so for me, you have to change, you have to have a diversity of thought, and you have to change, and you have to become increasingly aware of and educate yourself.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I saw you guys, some people from my team have dropped the link to what Charmin is referencing. If you guys want to click on that and check it out a little bit later. Okay, so we've already kind of touched on this, and we're going to go there because we're in a safe place, and I know you all are graciously going to guide us through this conversation. So we're at a really interesting time in history, which LaDonna, I think you pointed out, this is centuries old. It's not a new conversation, and yet it's an important one that people are facing right now. Black Lives Matter made headlines again in the media this summer. We have an election coming up, which is just a way to bring everybody together, right? What is and is not our responsibility when it comes to conversations on social media? So we're all working in virtual businesses. There's a lot of stuff going on online. The follow-up, I think, to this is something, and Jay actually helped me with this question, is what is the line between social justice and politics? And let's take this digital, right? Because this is the world we're in, where everybody's got an opinion online and thinks they can change everybody else's. Mm-hmm. How do we navigate this?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't know. I'm always a person, I'm independent thinking, right? So I don't know that that's the line, right? I don't know that there is a difference between social justice and politics. I think there's a connection between the two. When you start to talk about justice, you're talking about issues. So, for example, I worked in food justice. Well, that's because there's an injustice, right? I got involved in policy because we needed to have systemic change in order to make sure that what we were calling an injustice was addressed. But our society is political in that everything is political, right? There's a phrase that people used to say in the 60s, the personal is political. Whatever we are going through has a political slant to it. We can't avoid it. This comes to how you want to talk about conflict. So in conflict, somebody wants to be really comfortable. And they don't want to be uncomfortable, but you got to lean into discomfort in order to have a conversation around diversity, equity, and inclusion. If the goal is to be comfortable, then you're not going to get there. I want to say something about bias. We all have bias, and you're not going to get away from it. You have a bias around running out in traffic, and you teach that bias to your children. Why? Because you don't want them to get hit by a car. It makes sense, right? You might have a bias. I don't know where you are in the country. You might have a bias against black bears. And we know that black bears are friendly, right? And you have a bias to the black bear being around your front door. The bias is that you're going to stay in the house till the black bear is gone. Why? Because you don't want to be hurt by the bear. So bias is something that you have. It's not going to go away. You have to develop a series of tools to help you see around the bias. You have to be able to step out from the bias. Why is this important? Because the people who taught you bias are people who love you. Me and Charmin are telling you to do something different than your grandma done told you about how to do this. You done had your daddy tell you. You done had your uncles, your church, your ministers, and people who love you have given you this bias. And they didn't mean any harm, probably. Maybe some of them did, but not all of them. I don't believe they meant any harm. They were telling you stuff to help you live in the real world as they saw it. This work is going to fly into that bias. It's going to fly into that bias. It's going to bring up in you animosity, anger, and that's what you have to deal with when you start talking about social justice and you start talking about politics. When we start talking about politics, you see people are angry. They're full of fear. Where does that fear come from? It comes from the conditioning that we have when it comes to talking about any difference. Right now, Black Lives Matter is, the lightning rod. But it could be anything. Back in the day, it was Dr. King. Didn't nobody like Dr. King in the 1960s? Dr. King's approval ratings was less than 50%. I think it was something like 45%. People wasn't all up with Dr. King. Ain't that interesting? My grandmother used to tell me that. People didn't like Malcolm X either. But today, in their death, they are idolized and looked upon. So my point is this. It only takes a few people to move the needle. Dr. King didn't have 100% approval rating. Most people, including Black people, thought he needed to be quiet. He was causing too many problems. He was doing too much. I have friends that tell me they heard their parents say or grandparents say, I wish he would go get a job someplace and stop bothering them white folks. Why would they say that? Because they were afraid that he would be killed. Freedom for Black bodies is equated with terror. There's a fear there. That's why I'm telling you, you got to work on yourself. You can't work on the other. You've got to be conflict resilient. You've got to be able to stand up. You've got to find the words. You've got to change your business. You've got to do the right thing when it comes to voting. You've got to educate yourself. Charmin told you that. You've got to educate yourself. You've got to take some time to study. What are you reading? Are all the books that you read written by white folks? Are you reading any books by Black people? Are you? Are you reading any books by Latinx women? Are you reading any books by LGBTQIA folks? Are you watching television shows that have these people in it? It's not the other, it's you. I'm not talking to everybody else because they're not here. I'm talking to you.
So good.
So I guess I get a little, I'll be like, telling me about the other. Yeah, you cannot go change the world if you're not going to change you. To me, it's just that simple. You got to really be willing to change you. I have a thing called the Abolitionist Challenge. I challenge co-ops all over the country to end white supremacy in their co-ops. in their lifetime. Not somebody else's work is their work. And anybody who considers themselves a cooperator is welcome to come and do this work, right? They got 6 books they have to read in 6 months, and they got to take 6 concrete actions. Now that's easy because what I make my clients do is so much more than just 6 actions. But the point is to get you thinking and get you moving and get you talking and get you a vocabulary that can keep you in social engagement in conversations when you are talking about differences that make a difference. That's my goal, is to get you ready. How do you sit at the dinner table? How do you sit at the dinner table? Somebody had the baby on their lap. Sit at the dinner table with the baby on your lap and stay in social engagement. And your baby is hearing you use these words and not get all flustered about it. But how do you do that? So we're coming up with a placemat, right? I don't know how many people going to be in the same vicinity with their family, but I imagine people going to figure this out. But a placemat. I do have some book recommendations. One is My Grandmother's Hands by Redmond. Where's my book at? Here it goes. It looks just like this. My Grandmother's Hands. This is it's racialized trauma and the pathway to mending our hearts and bodies. I'm a somatic abolitionist, and Resma is my coach and my teacher. It's a New York Times bestseller book. Y'all got to get that book. If you're in a white body, read White Fragility. I know people get upset about the white lady, say she's making a lot of money, but I don't know what y'all thought. Why come she can't make no money? Writing about white folks. That's not a book for Black folks. That's a book for white people. Yes. Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. You got to shift perspectives. So we're talking about Black bodies, right? And generally talking about Black bodies that are male. That's a perfect book. It's giving you the male perspective. There's so many other books, but those are the 3 books that I have my clients read. If you go, and there's podcasts and there's articles, there's literature. But if you start there and you really read that book, and I don't mean read this book like it's a paperback novel. This is a workbook. This has got practices. You got to get your dictionary out, get your thesaurus out. You don't know who Langston Hughes is? They mention Langston Hughes, then you got to go look up Langston Hughes and you got to go read the poem that they're talking about. Don't just gloss over this thing. If you're really going to study it, you got to really get down with it. So I'm sorry, I had to come by and just tell y'all this. And I know I got to go because I got to train a client. And I'm going to stop talking, Charmin. I'm done.
No, again, you got to know yourself to grow yourself.
It's so good.
So I just echo everything that you say. Look, again, you're just dropping some nuggets to add to my toolbox so that in the event that I need to take it out, see, you never know when you need to use a tool, right? But you want to develop these tools so that when you need them to fix some things, then you can bring them out of the toolbox, and use them to fix some things. So as LaDonna had made recommendations on books that you should read, that will help you develop your toolbox of tools so that when you have these candid conversations or these crucial conversations or these conflict conversations, that you have the right tools in order to be best prepared. In business, you want to be passionate. You're passionate about the work that you're doing. So there's the passion, there's the people, and there's the problem. You don't want to be in business for yourself and you're working with people that you don't want to work with, because then you're going to have that, you may have that mentality where you just don't want to go to work. So sometimes you do have to polarize those folks by standing up for what you believe in. I struggled with only being a diversity and inclusion practitioner and only wanting to work with minority women and saying that out loud. But there's a need. And I enjoy the sparkle that goes into their eyes when they get the aha moment, that they know that there's a greatness inside of all of us. And we just need that greatness ignited. See, because we were created by greatness. And so there's greatness in all of us. And we are born to be rich. And if you didn't know it, please know it, because it's in here. Wallace Waddle, The Science of Getting Rich. Rich in thought. And the more, and people will say to me, some women that I coach, they'll say, I don't want to be rich. I don't want to have a lot of money. Money has problems, but money gives you resources. It gives you access. It gives you the resources to help more people. If you just take all the riches and you just hold them to yourself, then you're selfish. You should be able to add your unique value in the space that you're doing your freelance to help other people reach their greatness. That's all I have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was more than
the law of
plenty.
attraction. You got to have your money. Listen, this is a prosperity mindset. You cannot be inclusive with a poverty mindset. You got to have a prosperity mindset.
You know,
you got to know that we can that there's plenty, and our plenty is together. You know, if you got $5, got to have a prosperity mindset.
Right. Because, you know, when we want to help those that need help, and when we just give of charity, we are just giving them a fish. We need to be able to teach them how to fish so that they can have many, 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 many more good dinners.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic, ladies. I mean, I just have had goosebumps. I have a whole page of notes. We do have a book club at the Free Mama, so we'll get some of these on that rotation for sure, so we can hold each other accountable, not just to reading the book, but to doing the work. So thank you for those recommendations, both of you. Can you guys just throw your hearts, your money? They just ended on money mindset, your ideas, your aha moments. Thank you both so much for spending this hour with us, for sharing with us, for teaching us, for helping us, you know, go there and have these hard conversations. And most of all, thank you both for, I didn't know that you were going to do this, but it's so important that both of you in your responses emphasize that it starts with us. You know, all the accountability that's involved in this conversation. And I'm just so grateful. So thank you both tremendously for being here with all of us today. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity to be in the space with greatness.
I appreciate you all.
Women great. These Free Mamas are great. You guys are awesome. You got massive hearts. Yes, we love it. Well, I know you have a conversation to go jump onto. You have a client to serve, LaDonna. Charmin, thank you so much. Congratulations on your recent wedding. That is fantastic.
Yes.
And I wish you an amazing rest of your day. Stay in touch. Let's keep the conversation going. Thank you so much, ladies.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this conversation as much as I enjoyed hosting this panel for all of you Free Mamas. If you're interested in checking out any of the resources that our panelists mentioned during this discussion, make sure you head over to freemamaradio.com, and we've got links to all of those over there for you. We'll see you next time. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Free Mama Radio. Don't forget to check out Free Mama TV right here on YouTube for hundreds of how-to videos and interviews to help you start, grow, and scale a virtual business from home. If you want to join a community of tens of thousands of moms just like you, make sure you join the Free Mama Movement group over on Facebook. And lastly, if you want to learn more about how we can do this together, work to achieve your goals, and make you our next success story, check out my free training at thefreemamamovement.com. I'll see you next time.